Forgiveness is a topic that is currently near and dear to my heart. I'm having some challenges with one of my children, and this is something that I'm so glad we're talking about today. Hi, Mike. Hi, Cindy. Hi, John, my neighbor, my state neighbor. Hi, Nicole, Brandy from Georgia, and Melanie from New Zealand. Wonderful to have you all. So, what I'd like to do today, hi Susan, nice to see you. So, one of the things that I'd like to do today is to start with talking about what is forgiveness. So, I'd love you to put into the chat what does forgiveness mean to you? Because I did a little research before we got on and I looked up, well, what is forgiveness? And what I found in a couple different sites, including the Greater Good out of Berkeley, California, which is a wonderful website if you're not familiar with it, is that forgiveness is a purposeful decision to let go of feelings of resentment, blame, or revenge towards someone who has hurt you or harmed you, whether or not you think they deserve it. Whether or not you think they deserve it. It doesn't condone what they did, but rather frees you from the pain of holding on to your anger, your negative thinking, and your blame. In other words, forgiveness is going meta. So let's see what some of you say about forgiveness. Forgiveness is grace, helping yourself, release from self stress, letting go. I love those. Freedom, Gail adds. Fantastic. So when we think about going meta, and the meta prayer in mindfulness is, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be free from suffering, or something along those lines that you can adapt for yourself. Of course, forgiveness comes into that because if we're applying that prayer, that meta prayer, to our children or ourselves, it means that we're actually looking at what has happened or has hurt us, and we're trying to release some of the pain and stress. So Stephanie says acceptance. Um, Angie says, I feel like forgiveness is letting it go in your heart and mind and starting fresh. So true. Loving 100% unconditionally, forgiving others or ourselves. I think we're talking about the whole topic here, Susan. And Kelly, I'm sorry that you might be hurting. Yes. So, oh, that's for me. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. So, I think that forgiveness is about mercy and compassion. It's something that we offer because we realize that it's the most effective response to a situation. And it's also the only one we can control. So we can continue to be mad at our 14-year-old that he always leaves, he takes off his socks and leaves them in the TV room, no matter how many times we ask him not to do that. Or we can think about whether the socks are the primary issue we want to focus on, or is there something else that's more important than the socks? Could we do an evening sweep, which says, hey, before you go upstairs, let's look around the downstairs and see what might need to go upstairs, maybe to the hamper or be put in your backpack. But I think the thing that we want to think about with forgiveness, particularly toward our children, is this sense that they're doing what they're doing on purpose. And I think that's harder as our kids get older, particularly teenagers and emerging adults or grown adults. If you're a parent of a grown adult, you think, okay, well, my kid kind of is a functioning person outside of this relationship. But in this relationship, we continue to cause each other pain. And I find in my situation that it's extremely difficult to wrap my head around it because I feel both somewhat traumatized and I know this person also feels traumatized, that I've caused them trauma and they've caused me trauma. And we keep doing the same dance. And I will honestly say that, my one of my children is taking space from myself and my husband right now, and I think it's the best thing, but it doesn't feel very good. And I am struggling to forgive myself for all those hurts that I have caused them over the years that have kind of precipitated this, and I'm struggling to forgive them for the ways that they continue to engage with me that's painful to me. So that's why I think it's so important, particularly at this time of year, which is the season of light, when it's so dark for most of the day for many of us, to really consider our own light, how we want to be in the world. And in order to do that, we have to practice self forgiveness and forgiveness of others. And I think one of the best examples of a person who embodied forgiveness is Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was jailed for many, many years in South Africa. And he came out of jail and he forgave his oppressors and then went on to lead the country. Wow, what a concept, right? What a concept. So let's see what's in some of these comments here. John says, forgiveness means releasing the energy trapped in your heart. Yes. Susan says, to err is human, to forgive divine. Alexander Pope. Beautiful. Kelly, great ideas. Thank you. You're welcome. Karen, yes, I feel that. So I think that forgiveness is about mercy and compassion. It's something that we offer to others and for ourselves. Because when we haven't forgiven ourselves or we haven't forgiven someone else, what we find is that we are suffering. We are carrying around that cloud that Pigpen used to carry in the Charlie Brown cartoons, or just this heavy, invisible backpack that's weighing us down. So yes, it sometimes feels good to cry, and yes, it also feels good to figure out how you want to be accountable and to whom. So with forgiveness, it's something that we offer because it's the most effective thing we can control. Forgiveness encompasses an awareness of how you talk about a person to someone else, recognizing that a number of social, emotional, and environmental factors can influence someone's reactivity and behavior towards you, and finally, being cognizant of and less invested in your own self righteousness. I don't know about you, but when I feel like I've been wronged, I have my guard is up, that fur on the back of my neck is up, and I am a mad barking dog because I'm right in that I've been hurt, and I want to let them know how much they've hurt me. And even if someone apologizes, it might not be enough for you. So I want you to think about that. That's when you're dealing with adults. When we're dealing with kids, our own kids, we are trying to teach them how to be accountable without spiraling into a shame hole. Now, empathy is a key component of forgiveness, particularly when we are talking about your kids with ADHD. So, if you are a parent of a kid with ADHD, please share what is hard for you to forgive them about. If you're an adult with ADHD watching this, please let us know who is someone that you're struggling to forgive and why. Is it a parent? Is it a cousin? Is it a sibling? What would help? What are you struggling with? Why is it hard to forgive them? Um, so Kelly says there's a book. When I say no, I feel guilty, and of course there's all of Brene Brown's books. Kim says, excuse me. Kim says I can forgive my 11-year-old for behaviors he can't control, but I hate that I have to explain to other family members that he isn't getting away with things, but he can't control himself. Thank you so much, Kim, for saying that. So I think that so many people judge people with ADHD or ASD, or a learning disability for things that they do that may be somewhat out of their conscious awareness, and they think they should be different. Well, you're 25 or you're 35 or you're 11, you should know better. Well, ideally, yes, but I struggle, me, Sharon, with emotional control. So I'm in a conversation and I know it's not going well with someone I'm related to. The best thing for me to do would say, you know, I don't like where this is going. I think I'm gonna take a time apart. That's the best thing to do. And it's hard to do that when someone is saying, "Oh, so you're going to walk away? You're going to walk away from me? You're not going to continue? You're not going to resolve this?" The response would be yes, but it's hard to do that. And so when our families are on our case for how we're not raising our children the right way or things we could do that are better, it doesn't help us stick with what we know is right and how we want to be with our kids. In cases where parents are on your case or family members are on your case, I think it's important to say to them, maybe in advance of seeing them for the holidays, we're working on this issue and this issue. I am actively not going to be engaging with this other issue. Thank you, Melly. Thank you, Megan. Um, Teresa, how do you get people to stop when they are instigating your ADHD kid when they think they are just teasing them? Teresa, this is such a great question. Thank you. Um, I really don't like when the provocations that I'm seeing among young people and other adults, sometimes with kids, in this teasing realm. Teasing hurts. Teasing is not uh, some things that are funny, that's like sarcasm. It's not really funny, it's an expression of anger. Teasing is pointing out what isn't good about you, and I am going to act superior so I can do that. I'm going to tell you why you're this, that, and the other, instead of, you know, talking about it in a clean way or just talking about something else. So I think that when kids are teasing your kids, it's reasonable to say to teach your kid to say, I don't really like when you talk to me that way, or I don't think that's really funny, or how to basically say, I got to go and leave the situation. We have to teach our kids tools to manage or what a planned comeback would be that's regular. Okay. Um, Shannon, repeat behavior even after long talks. So, right, so you have a long talk with your kid. I don't want you to do this, and blah, blah, blah. And then they do it again. So, that's because after about 2 or 3 minutes of the talk, your child starts to hear. I'm big on the Charlie Brown metaphors today. Wah, 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 the teacher in Charlie Brown. And so, we want to have a conversation instead with our kids that engages them and uses reflective listening. I'm going to make a sentence and I'd like you to repeat it back to me. Then I'd like, and then I'll make another sentence and I'll repeat that. You can repeat that back to me. And then you can comment and I'll repeat that back to you. We want to teach them how to hear and how to express themselves so they can be heard. So if they repeat a behavior after long talks, keep your talk short. And then when the behavior is repeated, say, it's that, you could call it a name, like it's that elephant. Here you are, it's that elephant. Remember, we talked about it. Kids with ADHD are not going to stop doing something just because you talk to them about it. In fact, kids without ADHD struggle with that because they're kids, their brains are developing. So instead, we want to cue them, and so we want to work together on what that message will be. Let's see, Jenna, I struggle to forgive myself. A lot of us perfectionists struggle to forgive ourselves. We understand cognitively that we're all human and we all make mistakes, but in the moment, that is really hard. That lash comes out and we're, really kind of hurting ourselves. Karen, I struggle with discerning when I should cut my 8-year-old some slack for his behavior, when to hold him accountable. He needs to learn that actions have consequences. I agree. There are natural consequences. Oops, I didn't wear a warm enough coat. I'm cold. And there are logical consequences when I am disrespectful or I yell at my parents. That means that I'm not going to have access to my phone the next day. That's a logical consequence. And so I think that it's important for you to sit down with your 8-year-old or your 15-year-old and talk with them and say, where are we getting stuck in our family? What's something you'd like to work on? because perhaps a behavior that's on their list is also on your list. 9 times out of 10, that's the case. Work on that one behavior and hold him accountable for that. And then when you start to see some changes, you can move on to something else. People can really change one, maybe two things at a time. And for kids with ADHD, it's really one thing. So if you have a partner, talk about what that one thing is. Then sit with your child, talk about what that one thing is, and ask them what is their one thing for you. Because then they'll feel like actually what matters to them is not only what you're both working on, but that you as a parent are being accountable and you're modeling how you might be able to do something slightly differently and better. Andrea, it's hard to forgive my young adult daughter because she refuses to take her ADHD meds and it drastically impacts her life. I have ADHD too, and I don't understand why she doesn't want her meds anymore. I hear you, Andrea. And this is, I think, emerging adulthood is, my kids are 23 and 27, and I would say that emerging adulthood was the hardest parenting time next to middle school. And what's harder about parenting emerging adults or adults is you are powerless. You are helpless and you are powerless. So you can watch your kids actively self sabotage and you can talk with them about it and you may not understand it, but there's actually very little you can do. What they need is forgiveness. I love you. I don't understand the choices that you're making, but I'm here for you if you ever want to talk about it or if you're stuck and you need some support. That is what we can offer. And that is the hardest thing for us to be able to do because it's painful. It's super painful to see your kids doing something that isn't actually, it's actually hurting them. Kelly, I, in front of a preschool teacher, said, "You can cry. It's okay. I was talking to my son." Good for you, Kelly. Shannon, same. Her stepfather thinks I don't discipline, but at the time, it's feeding the fire, and I feel like I'm punishing a disability. Right. So I think it's really important to try to, instead of change someone altogether and work on all these things, pick one or two things and get your husband or your partner or your parents if you live with your parent, if you're an adult and you live with parents or grandparents, on the same page. You all need to be on the same page. Kim, that is so tough to deal with. I feel as though I'm pretty good at forgiving my children, 3 ADHD kiddos, but I struggle most with putting it all on myself and not forgiving myself or just blaming myself. So, Angie, if you were here, I would wrap you in my arms with a big hug. Let me go into the next part of my presentation because I think this is important. You are doing the best that you can with the resources you have available to you at any given time. And I think about this a lot for myself. Did I yell at my kids more than I would have liked to? Yes. Do I regret that? Oh, yes. And am I ashamed of it? Sure. But I also am trying very hard to realize that I came to being a parent with my own invisible backpack of experiences as a child of my parents. And I did a lot of work on myself and I thought I was ready, that I wasn't going to repeat, but I did. I did repeat some things. And that's because I am an amalgam of my experiences and my genes and my education. So you are too. I think it's important that if you have 3 ADHD kiddos, you've got to adjust your expectations so that you aren't so hard on yourself. Cindy, my daughter 43 is always throwing me under the bus because it's easy to blame me than accept herself. I hear you. Kelly, I love the 5 love languages. I think that's great, particularly in partnerships and sometimes with kids. If you can identify the love languages in your family, that's something that could improve your parenting. Um, Angie, there's a kid's version of that book and you love it. Fantastic. That's good to know. I will check that out. Um, I wrote it down. Kelly, teasing is bullying. John, I agree completely. Teasing is bullying. There's no question about it. And today, what happens is because of social media, there are these super fast teasing comments that go back and forth, and they seem like bullying. So let me talk a little bit about empathy. So empathy is a key component of forgiveness, particularly when we are talking to your kids with ADHD, or your partner with ADHD, or yourself with ADHD. Compassion teaches us that just like us, kids are doing the best they can in a given situation with the tools they have available to them in that moment. This is really important for the now, not now brain. When an ADHD brain, or any brain actually, is flooded with strong emotions, rational thinking goes on a quick vacation and the amygdala takes over with survival responses, and the thoughtful cognitive ones, like the ability to say, wow, this situation is going downhill fast, we need to pause, can sometimes just not emerge. um, when you're in pain, anger, sadness, guilt, or shame, it's much harder to practice empathy or compassion. It's common for all of us to thrust our pain back on the person who we see has caused it, whether it's a child or an adult. What we have to do is our own emotional and psychological work. Figure out why things hurt and what is the historical load you carry that your present interactions are replicating or have tapped into. Okay. In my family growing up, there was a lot of blame. And so it's easy for me in a situation with my current family, if someone is telling me about what I'm doing wrong, for me to take that blame on and then feel bad and either A, fight back, or B, just cry. Neither of those are very effective responses. And so I've worked on for years, and I will continue to work on probably till the day I die, how to do it differently. So we want to examine our narratives about ourselves and our children's stories about themselves, or our partner's stories about themselves. What are they telling themselves about who they are, who we are? Children act out when they are hurt, when they are hurting, or when they don't have the developed frontal lobes to manage their words and their feelings and their impulses effectively. This is why I think it's important to practice a take back of the day in your family. You're not going to get it right all the time. They're not going to get it right all the time. So have a family meeting or dinner or something and say, I think in this new year, 2022, we're going to start to do a take back of the day. And take back of the day is when you say something or you do something, usually words. I think it's easier to stick with that you realize after they've come out of your mouth, you wish you hadn't said that. As a parent, you can say, is that something you want to consider as your take back? Because sometimes kids, again, might be so activated they can't go there. As an adult, we might want to say, you know what? I think that's my take back. And then we're teaching our kids how to practice forgiveness in real time. And we are learning to practice forgiveness in real time. So let me go down. Sprinkle a little sometimes. I love sometimes. It's okay. Hugs. Kim, I wish my 25-year-old daughter was here to listen to this. This will be on. This is on the replay, and it's kept on the Adhd YouTube, and it's kept on my YouTube channel. Bob, I have struggled with focusing on a task for a long time. Many people do. What causes memory issues? So that's a long question. I mean, that's a short question with a long answer. And what I can say is that the way that working memory functions, and working memory is a key executive functioning skill that's often challenging for people, um, is that things happen to us, and we attach meaning to those things through our emotions. And so emotions and working memory are tied together. And so when something happens and we attach a positive feeling to it, we may remember that. When something happens and it's really terrible, we may attach a negative feeling to it, and we may remember that. It depends on the intensity of the experience and how well whatever the meaning that we attach to an experience is then transferred down the memory line. And what happens for a lot of people with ADHD, because working memory is like the computational space of the brain, is that things come in and they can't actually attach meaning or process them fast enough or efficiently enough to send it down into the longer term memory bank. And so those things are dissipated. Marjorie, I think we have to remember that ADHD young adults can be several years behind in brain development. I totally agree. My 23-year-old college graduate is home with us with no job, no car. He had to figure it out for himself to get to the doctor, so new meds he could do his job hunt. His room was a disgusting pigsty for months. Finally, today he asked to borrow my car. I said, as soon as you clean your room. I had to go in 5 times to declare it clean, but he did it in less than 45 minutes. Teachable moments. There was no yelling, just calm firmness. I love this. I thank you so much for sharing this, Marjorie. Yes, yes. We want to remember that the ADHD brain is up to 3 years behind in aspects of maturation. That has to do with the connections from this part of the brain to the rest of the brain. And emerging adulthood is very challenging for a lot of kids. If you are a clinician, I want you to know that I do a workshop on emerging adulthood. It's a day-long training with Dr. Steve O'Brien through PESI. Please check that out. And I know that there's a lot of resources here on attitude for emerging adulthood as well. Heather says, responding appropriately is exhausting. What do you suggest to continuously refill our bucket that is constantly being emptied by the amount of energy and time and patience it takes to respond the way that we should? Heather, that's such a great question. I agree. I think that, when you're trying to respond appropriately, it's like you're thinking about your response and you're managing the natural response that you have. So it's like double duty. So I'm wondering if you have some people or some places in your life where you don't have to filter so much. And if you don't, can you create or find some of those? Because your brain does need a rest, and some time to just kind of let it out. I worked with a family many years ago, and their 8-year-old, it was a single mom, would come home. There was an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and the 8-year-old would come home. He had ADHD and was bipolar, and they'd walk in the door, and he would take off his coat and he would start rolling around on the floor, and this drove the mother insane because there was they had to deal with the cat, they had to deal with getting dinner together. And the floor wasn't necessarily clean. And I asked him, and he said, "This is my flippy floppy time. I need to get out all my flippy floppies." And so we created 10 minutes when you come home to do what that the family would do to get out their flippy floppies. Whether it was some yoga mom decided to do, the 10-year-old wanted to listen to music and dance around, and the 8-year-old did the flippy floppy. So what, I guess my question is, what would be a flippy floppy for you, Heather? Where is a place where you can let it down a bit? Wow, there are tons of comments. I'm so excited to see that. Uh, okay. Bob, you're asking, how does one with ADHD manage time and get organized? Bob, that's a really good question. It's not the focus of what we're talking about today, but it has been the focus of previous Facebook Lives. So I encourage you to go to my YouTube channel or that of Attitude and check it out. Shannon, I feel horrible that she has to be on so many meds just to function. Right. So right now, what I would say to you, Shannon, is she's on these meds now, but development is in her favor. As her brain develops and matures, she may need less meds over time to function. And of course, pills don't teach skills. So she's on these meds that make her more available to learn the skills. So pick that one thing. You're welcome, Andrea. Kim, I think we really need to analyze our own expectations to forgive. Yes, I think we do. I think we need to really consider, what does it mean for us to forgive? Does that mean that you're right and I'm wrong? I don't think so. I think it means that I actually am going to transcend in some way for myself, for my own sanity and self-respect. I don't want to be hooked in this way anymore. Into a yelling match in anger. Okay. My mother is beautiful inside and out, lovely. I am blessed. It's easier for me because my teachers were not always respectful to me. I still struggle with safe people. Yes, many of us do. A daily do-over works for us. I love it, Jenna. High five. Kelly, take back of the day. You're welcome. Yes, we are all experiencing anniversaries on all fronts. Yes. So I don't understand what isn't linear. Kelly, you're having trouble listening to this. Can you say something about that? One can frequently hear me yelling, my bucket is empty. Kelly, the preschool teacher that mischaracterized my child, not even during COVID tests, he even got a pencil thrust into his leg by another student. She drew a sign of a crying emoji. He drew a sign of a crying emoji and she crossed it out. Okay, so in this case, Kelly, so I apologize if I misunderstood. It sounds like your child's teacher, his teacher is not understanding him or understanding anything about ADHD. And in those cases, I would absolutely want to call for a meeting with the teacher, the head of school, yourself, and if you have an advocate, that person. How do you find compassion in yourself? What a great question, Monica. You know, I think we have to find compassion in ourselves by digging deep, by remembering that nobody gets it right all of the time. And that and also recalling and focusing on the things that we do that we feel good about, the things that we like about ourselves. And one way to do this is to is is to keep a list at night. There's actually research about this. I have a journal. I do it myself. I really talk with you. You're my community here. And I talk with you about things that I actually do too. I keep a journal at the end of every day. I write 3 or 4 good things. Yesterday, one of my things was, well, I really liked my outfit because I went to my office and I decided to wear a skirt for the first time in months. It can be simple like that. It could also be, I had some very meaningful sessions and felt good about my work, or I had a lovely talk with a friend. So when you can start to keep track of these 3 good things a day, you start to actually, you can look back and notice, like, wow, you know, I'm okay. I'm more okay than I thought I was. So we want to be able to forgive ourselves. And this is very tough to do, especially for those of us who are perfectionists or run on the anxious side. Be accountable for our actions without going into a shame spiral of self loathing. This doesn't serve you, and it's not the model we want to offer for our kids, because even if we're not sharing those words with our kids, they pick up on things with their unconscious antenna. It's like they know exactly how to push our buttons, and we know exactly how to push our buttons because we put those buttons there for each other. We want to really develop compassion by learning to accept ourselves, warts and all, and stop engaging in compare and despair. Okay, Kelly, I'm glad I got it. You can only have one spiral at a time. True. Um, okay, Kim, thank you for coming. So I have some questions here. We've talked a lot about how to practice forgiveness of others. What is one thing you would like to work on in this next, you know, 2022, in this next period of time, that you would like to forgive yourself for? What is something you want to forgive yourself for? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to share a link because um, I'm actually starting up a small consultation group for parents of kids with have ADHD and anxiety. I think I am going to have to look for the, hold on a second. I'm going to look for the link. I'm going to put it right here. This is a new group that I'm starting, and the special thing about this group, it's only for 10 people. It's only for 10 families, because the idea is that it's small group therapeutic coaching, that you will get time with me, since I can't offer consulting to everyone for your particular situation. You'll also get support from peers, and you'll walk away with a plan that I call the OASIS plan for managing anxiety in your family. So I hope that you will click this link and check it out. I'm really excited about it. It's going to start in early January. Thank you. So, what are some things that you'd like to forgive yourself for? Angie says, for sometimes reacting instead of understanding. You know, Angie, that's what I would like to forgive myself for, is not calling for a break in the action when I'm feeling activated and I know I need it. Not to walk away in anger, not to be accusatory, but to actually say, I'm feeling activated. I need to settle. Let's call a break and come back at such and such a time. That's what I would like to forgive myself for, and that's what I want to get better at. Cassandra, for reacting when I know my daughter really needs patience and support. Yes, well, we all react. It's okay to say, I'm frustrated in this moment. I see that you're upset also. We can name what's going on, but we don't have to get, escalate the situation. We want to be able to practice that our kids might be pushing us in a way that seems like they are absolutely deliberately infuriating us, and they probably are. But they're doing that because they don't have other tools to express what's going on for them, to negotiate what they want, and to tolerate the disappointment of not getting what they want. So we have to work with those. So I'm curious, anyone else want to share what you'd like to forgive yourself for and work on in 2022? I think that it's very important for people with ADHD and for parents of kids with ADHD to really practice accountability without, shifting the focus too much to ourselves when we're dealing with our children, whether they're 25, 43, or 13. We want to be able to name what's going on for us, um, and then put it back on the kids, because the kids really don't want to hear a lot about your experience, and if they do, it's trying to deflect from you asking about them. Monica says procrastinating. Okay, you want to forgive yourself for procrastinating and change that. Thank you so much. Anybody else want to share what they would like to forgive themselves for and what they would like to change in this upcoming year? Now, I know we have one more Facebook Live before we stop for the holiday season. Um, let's see. Andrea, feeling so angry and hurt and right now. My 15-year-old just keeps spiraling further and further out of control. That must be so hard. For lying, stealing from everyone in our home. He calls me awful things which are so hurtful. So, Andrea, this sounds terrible in every way. Are you able to get some help? Do you have a family therapist? Is he seeing anyone to help him? Have you talked to his primary care provider? Is he on any medication? It sounds like he needs more support and your family needs support. It's not okay for kids to steal and lie and and disrespect you in those kinds of ways. So I think that interventions are, really called for right now. Russell Barkley's book on oppositional behavior would be a great one to check out. And also, there's so much stuff on attitude from Dr. Barkley on oppositional defiant behavior. Check it out. Because usually, I think oppositional defiant disorder is a relationship problem, and usually comes from a lot of not just self-loathing but depression. Tricia, forgive myself for avoiding the problems we are facing. Yeah, we, I'm going to say that we all avoid things that we don't want to deal with or that seem really complicated. Avoidance is anxiety, one of anxiety's best friends. We'll definitely be talking about avoidance in my coaching group. I think forgiving yourself for avoidance and breaking down what you need to do into smaller chunks so it seems approachable would help a lot. Nicole, losing it and arguing back. Oh, I hear you on that one. We've got to forgive ourselves for that. Yes. He's on several meds. Recently seeing a new doctor. He's been diagnosed with that. Thank you, Annie, for putting up those articles. Jenna, I feel you on this. Okay, great. So we have a few more minutes. Does anyone else want to talk about something they'd like to work on? I think one of the things that we want to try to practice in terms of forgiveness with others, with our kids, is that they're trying to learn how to be in the world, and they are going to stumble left, right, and center. And part of the stumbling is how they push up against us. That's their job. And then they pull us in, and then they push against us, and they pull us in. This is the dance of maturity, of maturation. Our job is to really try to keep that meta conversation, particularly for those of you who are struggling with your kids, to really, before you go to sleep, be able to say, may you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering, or whatever a meta prayer would be for you. Okay? Because what your child needs is to feel met where they are and loved for who they are, warts and all. So let's see. Karen says, can we ever do enough for our children? I feel like I never do enough to teach my son the skills he needs. Provide structure the brain requires, and feel like a failure as a mom. I want to say to you, Karen, you are not a failure. You are here right now getting help, support, and information to make you a better mom. Can you make it all go away? No. You are doing the best you can with the resources and tools that you have. He is wired a particular way in a particular situation. You can't necessarily change those things. You can't change what's happening here. You are intervening in his environment and helping him as much as you can. But this is ultimately his journey. And I think that's the hardest thing for parents. We want to make our kids, we want to make things right for them. And sometimes we can make them just so right, and then they're on their own. And that's not necessarily our fault as parents. So no, I don't think you're failing. I think you're doing what you can and you're working on yourself. Jennifer, want to get myself help with ADHD in 2022. I've been procrastinating classic because I don't know where to begin. Well, Jennifer, being here is a great way to begin. And I think, really learning about therapy versus coaching. I know Attitude has a list of providers. If you check out Adda, they also have a list, and Chad, they both have lists of providers and who could help you. Thank you for saying that. Kelly, sad for taking care of others and not myself. Kelly, hug to you. One thing a day, one self-care thing a day. It can be small, it can be bigger. For me, it's exercise. I try to do something every day. That's how I know I'm taking care of myself. But it might be different for you. It might be sitting with a cup of tea and just daydreaming, thinking about whatever you want, or reading the paper. Teresa, you're not failing him. You're doing the best you can. It's hard. Trisha, I'm going to work on letting my kids be more independent, mistakes and all. Bless you. Andrea. Andrea says, I definitely feel for her being a failure. I feel like that all the time. Oh, you guys are breaking my heart today. Listen, you're only a failure if your goal is perfection. You're not a failure if you're actively engaging in a process. It may not be working out the way you want. Your child may be suffering. I hear you. I hear you. I get this. Believe me, every cell of my body gets this. But you can only do so much. I mean, you are doing what you can, and then some of that there's just time and practice. Time and practice. Kelly, the 3-year behind model is disrespectful in my opinion. Thanks for your help for minors. Okay, it's not that you're 3 years behind, Kelly. I'm sorry if that's what you took away. What happens is that it's a lagging concept, is that the frontal lobes in their development lag as much as 3 years differently than kids who are neurotypical. It's not a behind, it's a slower process. And you're welcome. Okay. Maria, is there any support groups for parents for support? So I did say, and I'll put this in the chat again, that I'm starting a parent support group. It's in the chat if you look up above, or you can go to my website, and I encourage you to sign up. It is a support group for parents of kids with ADHD and anxiety. And that I think you'll like it a lot. I encourage you to do that and to keep coming here. Okay, I'm glad. Kids mature only one day at a time. Yes, Susan, thank you. Jenna, I had no clue about the lag. You're welcome. Teresa, my son is in 5th grade, but he's 3rd grade at reading level, no math level, and 1st grade at reading. And, I have to imagine that is so very frustrating for him, because it's hard socially and it's hard in terms of your perception of yourself. So he needs extra patience and understanding, because school is not probably his place. Where is his place in the world? What does he do where he feels good about himself? So thank you all so much for joining me today. I'm going to put again in the chat the group that I'm doing. I hope that you'll consider joining me, and have a good week. Put your hand on your heart and forgive yourself. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day and a wonderful weekend.